This presentation shall cover the following: Jung's childhood, his dreams and fantasies, years with Sigmund Freud, the principles of opposites, equivalence, and entropy, ego, personal unconscious and collective unconscious, psychological types and functions, complexes, the archetypes persona, anima, animus, shadow, and self, developmental stages of personality, individuation, questions about nature, and some reflections on Jung's theory. An unhappy childhood. Carl Gustav Jung was born in 1875 in Switzerland into a family that included 9 clergymen, introducing him to religion and the classics at an early age. He was close to his father, who he considered weak and powerless. His father was moody and irritable, and failed to be the strong authority that Carl needed. Jung's mother was more powerful, but her emotional instability made her behave erratically. She could be happy and cheerful, and then become mumbling incoherently and gazing vacantly into space. Jung saw her as being two people living in the same body. As a result of her mother's odd behavior, Jung became wary of women, which explains his rejection of Freud's notion that every boy has a sexual longing for his mother. To avoid his parents' continuing marital problems, he spent many hours alone in the attic of his home carving a wooden doll, a figure whom he could confide. His sister was born when he was 9 years old, although her arrival did not ease his loneliness. Dreams and fantasies. Jung felt cut off from the external world, the world of conscious reality. He turned inward to his unconsciousness, a world of dreams, visions, and fantasies, a world he feels more secure. When faced with a problem, he found a solution through his dreams and visions. This influenced his theory of personality. Jung's loneliness is also reflected in his theory, focusing on the inner growth of the individual rather than on relationships with other people. This is in contrast to Freud's theory, which is concerned more with interpersonal relationships, perhaps because Freud did not have such an isolated and introverted childhood. The years with Freud. When Jung and Freud met for the first time, they were so congenial and had so much to share that they talked for 13 hours. Freud once wrote to Jung, "I formally adopt you as an eldest son and anointed you as my successor and crown prince." Jung countered, "Let me enjoy your friendship, not as one between equals, but as that of a father and son." The nature of the relationship changed afterwards, when Freud attempted to designate Jung as son and heir. Jung felt that Freud somehow was forcing himself on him. Their relationship ended when, contrary to Freud's hope, Jung was a critical disciple. Jung had his own ideas and unique view of human personality and began to express these notions. Psychic energy, opposites, equivalence, and entropy. Jung opposed Freud's view on libido. For Freud, libido is primarily a sexual energy. Jung said that libido is a broad, undifferentiated life energy. He used the term libido in 2 ways: as a diffuse and general life energy, and as a narrow psychic energy that fuels the work of personality, which he calls psyche. It is through psychic energy that psychological activities such as perceiving, thinking, feeling, and wishing are carried out. For example, when a person is highly motivated to attain power, then he will devote most of his psychic energy to seeking power. Jung based his explanation of the functioning of psychic energy from physics. He proposed 3 basic principles. These are the principle of opposites, the principle of equivalence, and the principle of entropy. The first is the principle of opposites. This is the conflict between opposing processes or tendencies that is necessary to generate psychic energy. Every feeling or wish has its opposite. This opposition or antithesis, or the conflict between polarities, is the primary motivator of behavior and generator of energy. Therefore, the sharper the conflict between polarities, the greater the energy produced. Second is the principle of equivalence. This is the continuing redistribution of energy within a personality. If the energy that is expended on certain conditions or activities weakens or disappears, that energy is transferred elsewhere in the personality. For example, if we lose interest in a person, the psychic energy formerly invested in that area is shifted to a new one. The third principle is the principle of entropy. This is a tendency towards balance or equilibrium within the personality. The ideal is an equal distribution of psychic energy over all structures of the personality. If two desires or beliefs differ greatly in intensity or psychic value, energy will flow from the more strongly held to the weaker. If perfect balance or equilibrium were attained, then the personality would have no psychic energy because, as noted earlier, the opposition principle requires conflict for psychic energy to be produced. The system of personality. In this portion of the presentation, we will discuss the following: the three major systems of personality, the two types of mental attitudes, the two psychological functions, and the 8 psychological types. According to Jung, the total personality or psyche is composed of several distinct systems or structure that can influence one another. The major systems are the ego, personal unconscious, and the collective unconscious. The ego is the center of consciousness. This is the part of the psyche that is concerned with perceiving, thinking, feeling, and remembering. It is our awareness of ourselves and is responsible for carrying out the normal activities of our waking life. Much of our conscious perception of and reaction to our environment is determined by the opposing mental attitudes of extroversion and introversion. Extroversion is an attitude of the psyche characterized by an orientation toward the external world and other people. Extroverts are known to be open, sociable, and socially assertive. Introversion, on the other hand, is an attitude of the psyche characterized by an orientation toward one's own thoughts and feelings. Introverts are withdrawn and often shy. Psychological functions refer to different and opposing ways of perceiving or apprehending both the external real world and our subjective inner world. Jung proposed 4 functions of the psyche. These are sensing, intuiting, thinking, and feeling. These are grouped into 2, the non-rational functions and the rational functions. Under the non-rational functions are sensing and intuiting. These do not use the process of reason. They accept experiences but do not evaluate them. Sensing reproduces an experience through the senses, just like when a photograph copies an object. Intuiting does not rise directly from an external stimulus. If we believe someone else is with us in a darkened room, our belief may be based on our intuition or a hunch rather than on actual sensory experience. Rational functions include thinking and feeling. These involve making judgments and evaluations about our experiences. Although they are opposite, both are concerned with organizing and categorizing experiences. Thinking involves a conscious judgment of whether an experience is true or false. Feeling expresses evaluation made in terms of like or dislike, pleasantness or unpleasantness, stimulation or dullness. Jung proposed 8 psychological types, which are based on the interactions of the two attitudes introversion and extroversion, and the 4 functions, which are thinking, feeling, sensing, and intuiting. These are the following. Extroverted thinking. These people live strictly in accordance with society's rules. They repress feelings and emotions and are perceived as rigid and cold. They are logical, objective, and dogmatic. Extroverted feeling. These people tend to repress the thinking mode and to be highly emotional. They conform to the traditional values and moral codes that were taught to them. They are emotionally responsive and make friends easily. They tend to be sociable and effervescent. This type is more typical of women than men. Extroverted sensing. These people focus on pleasure and happiness and on seeking new experiences. They are strongly oriented toward the real world and are adaptable to different kinds of people and changing situations. Extroverted intuiting. These people find success in business and politics because of their keen ability to exploit opportunities. They are attracted by new ideas and tend to be creative, being able to inspire others to accomplish and achieve. They also tend to be changeable, moving from one idea or venture to another, and to make decisions based more on hunches than on reflection. Introverted thinking. These people do not get along well with others and have difficulty communicating ideas. They focus on thought rather than on feelings and have poor practical judgment. Intensely concerned with privacy, they prefer to deal with abstractions and theories, and they focus on understanding themselves rather than other people. Introverted feeling. These people tend to repress rational thought. They are capable of deep emotion, but avoid any outward expression of it. They are mysterious and inaccessible, and tend to be quiet, modest, and childish. They have little consideration for others' feelings and thoughts, and appear withdrawn, cold, and self-assured. Introverted sensing. These people appear passive, calm, and detached from the everyday world. They look on most human activities with benevolence and amusement. They are aesthetically sensitive, expressing themselves in art or music, and tend to repress their intuition. Introverted intuiting. These people focus so intently on intuition that they have little contact with reality. These people are visionaries and daydreamers, aloof, unconcerned with practical matters, and poorly understood by others. Considered odd and eccentric, they have difficulty coping with everyday life and planning for the future. The personal unconscious. In Jung's system, this is similar to Freud's conception of the pre-conscious. This is the reservoir of materials that was once conscious but has been forgotten or suppressed because it is trivial or disturbing. There is a two-way traffic between one's ego and personal unconscious. For example, our attention can wander readily from this presentation to a memory of something we did yesterday. All kinds of experience are stored in the personal unconscious, just like a filing cabinet. Complexes. A complex is a core or pattern of emotions, memories, perceptions, and wishes organized around a common theme such as power or status. We group or arrange our experiences in our personal unconscious, which Jung called complexes. For example, we might say that a person has a complex about power or status, meaning that he or she is preoccupied with that theme to the point where it influences behavior. The person may try to become powerful by running for elective office or to identify or affiliate with power by driving a motorcycle or a fast car. The complex determines how the person perceives the world by directing thoughts and behavior in various ways. Complexes may be conscious or unconscious. Those that are under conscious control can intrude on and interfere with consciousness. The person with a complex is generally not aware of its influence, although other people may easily observe its effects. Some complexes may be useful, but some may be harmful. Jung believed that complexes originate not only from our childhood and adult experiences, but also from our ancestral experiences, the heritage of species contained in the collective unconscious. The collective unconscious. The deepest and least accessible level of the psyche, the collective unconscious is the most unusual and controversial aspect of Jung's system. Jung believed that just as each of us accumulates and files all our personal experiences in the personal unconscious, so does humankind collectively, as a species, store the experiences of the human and pre-human species in the collective unconscious. This heritage is passed on to each new generation. Whatever experiences are universal, or are repeated relatively unchanged by each generation, become part of our personality. Our primitive past becomes the basis of the human psyche, directing and influencing present behavior. For example, we do not inherit a fear of snakes. Rather, we inherit the potential to fear snakes. We are predisposed to behave and feel the same way people have always behaved and felt. Whether the predisposition becomes reality depends on the specific experiences each of us encounters in life. The archetypes. The ancient experiences contained in the collective unconscious are manifested by recurring themes or patterns Jung called archetypes. By being repeated in the lives of succeeding generations, archetypes have become imprinted on our psyche and are expressed in our dreams and fantasies. The major archetypes include the persona, anima and animus, the shadow, and the self. Persona. This refers to a mask that an actor wears to display various roles or faces to the audience. According to Jung, the persona archetype is a mask, a public face we wear to present ourselves as someone different from who we really are. The persona is necessary, Jung believed, because we are forced to play many roles in life in order to succeed in school and on the job and to get along with a variety of people. Although the persona can be helpful, it can also be harmful if we come to believe that it reflects our true nature. For Jung, the ego may come to identify with the persona rather than with the person's true nature, resulting in a condition known as the inflation of the persona. Anima animus. This refers to Jung's recognition that humans are essentially bisexual. Each sex manifests characteristics, temperaments, and attitudes of the other sex by virtue of centuries of living together. The psyche of the woman contains masculine aspects called the animus archetype, and the psyche of the man contains feminine aspects or the anima archetype. These opposite sex characteristics aid in the adjustment and survival of the species, because they enable a person of one sex to understand the nature of the other sex. Jung insisted that both the anima and animus must be expressed. Otherwise, these vital aspects will remain dormant and undeveloped, leading to one-sidedness of the personality. Shadow. This is the most powerful archetype according to Jung. This contains the basic, primitive animal instincts, which has the deepest roots of the archetypes. Behaviors that society considers evil and immoral reside in the shadow, and this dark side of human nature must be tamed if people are to live in harmony. We must restrain, overcome, and defend against these primitive impulses. If we do not, society will likely punish us. On the other hand, the shadow is also the source of vitality, spontaneity, creativity, and emotion. Therefore, if the shadow is totally suppressed, the psyche will be dull and lifeless. The animal instincts do not disappear when they are suppressed. Rather, they lie dormant, awaiting a crisis or a weakness in the ego so they can gain control. When that happens, the person becomes dominated by the unconscious. Self. This represents the unity, integration, and harmony of the total personality. To Jung, the ultimate goal of life is to strive toward that wholeness. This archetype involves bringing together and balancing all parts of the personality. In the self archetype, conscious and unconscious processes become assimilated so that the self, which is the center of the personality, shifts from the ego to a point of equilibrium, midway between the opposing forces of the conscious and the unconscious. As a result, material from the unconscious comes to have a greater influence on the personality. The self cannot begin to emerge until the other systems of the psyche have developed. This occurs around middle age, a crucial period of transition in Jung's system, as it was in his own life. The actualization of the self involves goals and plans for the future, and an accurate perception of one's abilities. Because development of the self is impossible without self-knowledge, it is the most difficult process we face in life and requires persistence, perceptiveness, and wisdom. The yin-yang symbol illustrates the complementary sides of our nature. The dark side represents feminine aspects, or the anima archetype, and the light left side represents masculine aspects, or the animus archetype. The dot of the opposite color in each portion indicates the expression of the characteristics of the opposite archetype. The development of personality. Jung opposed Freud for only emphasizing past events as shapers of personality, with the future being excluded. Jung believed we develop and grow regardless of age, and are always moving toward a more complete level of self-realization. Although not as detailed as Freud's, Jung suggested specific periods in the overall developmental process. These developmental stages are the following. Childhood. The ego begins to develop in early childhood, at first in a primitive way, because the child has not yet formed a unique identity. What might be called the child's personality is at this stage little more than a reflection of the personalities of his or her parents. They can enhance or impede personality development by the way they behave toward the child. Puberty to young adulthood. It is not until puberty that the psyche assumes a definite form and content. This period, which Jung called psychic birth, is marked by difficulties and the need to adapt. Childhood fantasies must end as the adolescent confronts the demands of reality. From the teenage years through young adulthood, we are concerned with preparatory activities such as completing our education, beginning a career, getting married, and starting a family. Our focus during these years is external. Our conscious is dominant, and in general, our primary conscious attitude is that of extroversion. Young adulthood should be an exciting and challenging time filled with new horizons and accomplishments. Middle age. Jung believed that major personality changes occur between the ages of 35 and 40. This period of middle age was a time of personal crisis for Jung and many of his patients. By then, the adaptation problems of young adulthood have been resolved. The typical 40-year-old is established in a career, a marriage, and a community. Middle age is a natural time of transition in which the personality is supposed to undergo necessary and beneficial changes. Individuation. Individuation involves becoming an individual, fulfilling one's capacities, and developing one's self. The tendency towards individuation is innate and inevitable, but it will be helped or hindered by environmental forces such as one's educational and economic opportunities and the nature of the parent-child relationship. To strive for individuation, middle-aged persons must abandon the behaviors and values that guided the first half of life and confront their unconscious, bringing it into conscious awareness and accepting what it tells them to do. They must listen to their dreams and follow their fantasies, exercising creative imagination through writing, painting, or some other form of expression. The central theme in Jung's individuation process is that we must bring each aspect of the personality into harmony with all other aspects. Awareness of only the good side of our nature produces a one-sided development of the personality. As with other opposing components of personality, both sides of this dimension must be expressed before we can achieve individuation. Questions about human nature. Jung's image of human nature is quite different from Freud's. Jung did not hold such a deterministic view, but he did agree that personality may be partly determined by childhood experiences and by the archetypes. However, there is ample room in Jung's system for free will and spontaneity, the latter arising from the shadow archetype. He took a mixed position on the nature-nurture issue. The drive toward individuation and transcendence is innate, but it can be aided or thwarted by learning and experience. The ultimate and necessary goal of life is self-realization. Although rarely achieved, we are continually motivated to strive for self-realization. Unlike Freud, Jung thought that childhood experiences were influential but did not completely shape our personality by age 5. We are affected more by our experiences in middle age and by our hopes and expectations for the future. Each individual is unique only during the first half of life. When some progress toward individuation is made in middle age, we develop what Jung designated as a universal kind of personality in which no single aspect is dominant. Thus, uniqueness disappears and we can no longer be described as one or another particular psychological type. Jung presented a more positive, hopeful image of human nature, and his optimism is apparent in his view of personality development. We are motivated to grow and develop, to improve and extend ourselves. Progress does not stop in childhood, but continues throughout life. We always have the hope of becoming better. Jung further argued that human species also continues to improve. Despite his basic optimism, he expressed concern about the danger he saw facing Western culture. He referred to this danger as a sickness of dissociation. By placing too great an emphasis on materialism, reason, and empirical science, we are in danger of failing to appreciate the forces of the unconscious. We must not abandon our trust in the archetypes that form our heritage. Thus, his hopefulness about human nature was a watchful and warning kind. Reflections on Jung's theory. Jung's complex and unusual approach to the human personality has had considerable impact on a broad range of disciplines, notably psychiatry, cultural history, sociology, economics, political science, philosophy, and religion. Jung made several important and lasting contributions to psychology. The word association test became a standard projective technique and inspired the development of the Rorschach ink-blot test and the so-called lie detection techniques. The concepts of psychological complexes and of introverted versus extroverted personalities are widely accepted in psychology today. The personality scales that measure introversion and extroversion are standard diagnostic and selection devices. A great deal of research is being conducted on the introversion-extroversion personality dimensions. The bulk of Jung's theory was not received enthusiastically by psychologists. One reason concerns the difficulty of understanding Jungian concepts. Sigmund Freud, Alfred Adler, and others wrote in a clear style that allows their books to be easily read and understood. Jung did not write for the general public. Reading his work can be frustrating, so beset his books by inconsistencies and contradictions. Jung said, "I can formulate my thoughts only as they break out of me. It is like a geyser. Those who come after me will have to put them in order." Jung's belief of the occult and the supernatural is probably the source of most of the criticism directed at his theory. Evidence from mythology and religion is not accepted in an era when reason and science are considered the most legitimate approaches to knowledge and understanding. Critics charge that Jung accepted the mythical and mystical occurrences his patients reported as scientific evidence.
And we think we are able to be born today and to live in no myth, without history. That is a disease. That's absolutely abnormal, because man is not born every day. He's once born in a specific historical setting with the specific historical qualities, and therefore he is only complete when he has a relation to these things. It's just as if you were born without eyes and ears. When you are growing up with no connection with the past. For the understanding of natural science, you need no connection with the past. You can wipe it out. And that is a mutilation of the human being.